Shalom! Welcome to another Blackboard Hebrew video. I'm Tim McNinch, and in this video, I'll be teaching you everything you need to know about the Dagesh. Stick around to the end because I've included a little game to help you practice recognizing the different Dageshim and Dagesh lookalikes. One thing I should mention at the beginning, everything I'm saying here about the Dagesh applies both to biblical and modern Hebrew. In modern, usually the language is written without vowels and other pointing, except when students are just beginning to learn. These dots are kind of like pronunciation training wheels. But sometimes even advanced Hebrew speakers will include the Dagesh or other marks just to clarify pronunciation, and when they do, all of these principles apply. So whether you're learning Hebrew to speak it or to read the Hebrew Bible, this lesson should help you make sense of all those dang dots. Az bo natchil. Let's get started. Now take a look at this. It's the opening verse of the book of Ruth from the Hebrew Bible. In addition to the letters, there are all these sorts of dots and various squigglies. Most of them are vowel markers. But in this video, we're going to focus on these, the dots inside the letters. This is the Dagesh. But what does the Dagesh do? Well, the truth is it doesn't do anything. Just like all the marks that aren't letters, the Dagesh doesn't actually do anything. It's only a marker or a flag to get your attention. I like to think of it kind of like a pronunciation asterisk. It tells you that when you're reading a word aloud, you need to pay attention to the sound of this letter. For example, in this word, hamelech, the Dagesh in the letter mem is there to alert us to the fact that this letter is doubled. That is, it's sounded twice. If you were to transliterate this with English letters, it would look like this. And the double M, hamelech, helps us to know where to divide the syllables when we pronounce it. But instead of writing two mems, in Hebrew we just use one mem, and we give it a dot. Again, the dot doesn't do anything. It just reminds us that the mem is actually two mems. This kind of Dagesh, the one that alerts you to a doubled letter, is known by its Latin name in grammar speak as the Dagesh forte, or in Hebrew, the Dagesh chazak, which means strong. You can think of it as being strong enough to squeeze two letters into one, though of course the Dagesh isn't actually doing the squeezing, it's just telling you that the squeezing's been done. Here are a couple other things that you should know about the Dagesh chazak. Most letters in the Hebrew alphabet can be doubled, except for 5, Aleph, He, Chet, Ayin, and Resh. These are known as guttural letters because their sound is formed in the back of the throat, making them very difficult, if not impossible, to double. So you'll never see a doubling dot, that is, a Dagesh chazak, in these. However, any other letter in the alphabet can be doubled, and so you'll find the Dagesh chazak in any of them. So that's the Dagesh chazak. There is another kind of Dagesh with the Latin name lena, or in Hebrew, Dagesh kal, which means light, or perhaps weak in contrast to the Dagesh chazak. The Dagesh kal doesn't mark doubled letters, but it does flag something about the sound of the letter in which it's found. So here's a common Hebrew word. Its first letter, bet, has the Dagesh kal, because it's a letter that has two possible pronunciations, be and ve. That means we need to know whether to pronounce this word beged or veged. That's what the Dagesh kal is here for, to tell us that this word is pronounced beged. There are actually 6 Hebrew letters with 2 potential pronunciations or articulations, bet, gimel, dalet, Kaf, Pei, and Tav. Together, these are known by the acronym Beged Kefet, which means something like knotted up clothing in Hebrew. But really the phrase is only ever used for the acronym that's made by these 6 letters. Whenever these letters are marked with a Dagesh, it signals that they're pronounced with a hard sound. Be, ge, de, ke, pe, or te. In grammar speak, these are known as plosive articulations because of the little explosion of air that you make by stopping and starting the airflow. You can actually feel this plosion if you hold your hand right in front of your mouth as you say them. Be, de, pe. But without the dagesh, these letters are pronounced with a softer sound. Ve, re, je, che, fe, fe. This is called spirantized articulation because its sound is produced by the same mouth shape as the plosive, but with a smooth, continual flow of air. Now, to make things a bit more complicated, 3 of these spirants for Gimel, Dalet, and Tav fell out of use somewhere along the way, and in most dialects of modern Hebrew, you'll only hear the plosive articulation for them, whether or not there's a dagesh there. The grammatical difference is still there, just not the pronunciation difference. But don't worry about that too much. Just know that in any of these 6 letters, if you see the dagesh, they get the plosive version. And if you see a bet, kaf, or pei without the dagesh, they're pronounced with the spirant version. Ve, che, fe. So those are our 2 dageshim, the dagesh chazak or forte, and the dagesh kal or lena. But you know what? They look absolutely identical. So how do we tell them apart? Here's how it works. In the alphabet, remember that you never get a dagesh of either kind in the gutturals, so you don't have to worry about them. And here are our 6 beged kefets, the only letters that can take a dagesh kal. So if you see a dagesh in any other letter, you know for sure that it's a dagesh chazak, marking a doubled letter. This only gets complicated when there's a dagesh in one of the beged kefets. In that case, it could be either dagesh, and we have to think about it a little more. The easy trick here is to look in the rearview mirror. See what came immediately before the letter with the dagesh. For example, here's that first verse of Ruth again. And here's a dagesh in the bet of bimeh. If we look behind it, it's preceded by this yod. So here's the rule. In a beged kefet letter, following any consonant or a shva, the dagesh is always a kal. No doubled letter, it's just signaling the hard plosive sound. Okay, here's another one in the bet of mi bet. Right before the bet is this chirik, a vowel. The rule here is if the dagesh follows a vowel, it's a dagesh chazak. It's letting us know that this bet is actually a double letter. Well, let's check the others here just for practice. Here's another bet in bis de. Look in the rear view, and there's a resh, a consonant. So, the dagesh is a kal. One more, in the tav of ve'ishto. Look in the rear view, and here's a shva. So, this is also a dagesh kal. Make sense? All right. Well, before we end, I need to introduce you to a couple of imposters, Dagesh doppelgangers. There are a couple of these Dagesh lookalikes, dots and letters that are not actually Dageshim. Take a look at this. It's another verse from the beginning of Ruth. And here at the end of the first word is a vav with a dot. There's actually 2 of them in this word. Now, even though it looks like a dagesh, it's not actually a dagesh. But it's doing the same thing as a dagesh. It's alerting us, like an asterisk, to something unusual about the pronunciation of this letter. A vav with a dot can indicate a doubled v sound, but much more often it's signaling a vowel sound, an oo sound. This is called the shuruk, and you can hear that oo sound in its name, shuruk. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but just so you know, You can tell a shuruk apart from a doubled vav by looking again in the rearview mirror. If it's preceded by a consonant, like this one is by a tav, then it's a shuruk. But don't get too hung up on memorizing that rule and its exceptions. It'll actually be quite rare that you come across a doubled vav, unless your name happens to be David. But anyway, moving on. The other Dagesh doppelganger is this one here, a hey with a dot. Now wait a sec, I can hear you yelling at the screen. Hey is a guttural letter, and you said that they never get a dot. Well, hey never gets a dagesh, but this isn't a dagesh. It is a mapik. Much like a dagesh, the mapik is signaling that there's something notable about this letter. Usually a hey at the end of the word is indicating a feminine ending with an ah sound. Without a dot in this hey, the word would be ume isha, and from a woman. The word isha means woman. But the dot, the mapik, tells us no, this hey isn't just an ah ending. It's actually a consonantal hey. It has meaning, and in this case, it's a possessive ending attached to the word ish, meaning man. So this word doesn't mean and from a woman. With the mapik, it means and from her man. The hey signals the possessive her. All right, enough on that. Let's review and play our game. Here are our 4 dots. The dagesh chazak signals a doubled consonant. It never appears in the guttural letters, and you can identify it because it always follows a vowel of some sort. The dagesh kal only shows up in beged kefet letters. It signals a hard plosive pronunciation. And you can tell it from the chazak because the kal always follows a consonant or a shva. The shuruk isn't a dagesh, it's a vav with a dot. It signals an u vowel, and it always follows a consonant. And finally, the mapik. It's a hey with a dot. It signals a hey that functions as a consonant with meaning, not just a vowel sound. And it usually indicates a possessive suffix. Great, so let's wrap up with a game. First, let's make things look a bit more festive. And let's stick a countdown timer up here. We'll put up another text from the beginning of Ruth. And we'll get rid of our answer dots here. So here's how this game works. I'll circle a dot like this one in Vatishena, and then I'll give you 5 seconds to figure out which dot it is before I reveal the answer. Now this one follows a vowel, so it's a dagesh chazak. All right, you're up. Next we have this kaf in Vativkena. Ready? All right, it follows a shva, so it's a kal. How'd you do on that one? All right, next. Aha, there's a dot in that shin. It's not a beged kefet, so automatically it must be dagesh chazak. Next, pei, it's a beged kefet, and it follows a shva, so must be a kal. All right, you're doing great. Next. Okay, a hey with a dot in it. Oh, wait a minute. It's a guttural. Oh yeah, hey with a dot. That's the mapik. You got that, I'm sure. Next we have this one. A vav with a dot, and it follows a consonant. Must be the good old shuruk. In fact, this is Verut. Rut is the title character of the book. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. This is a dalet with a dot. It's a beged kefit. And it follows a consonant. Okay. That's a kal. Next we have this hey with a dot. Yeah, that's easy. Hey with a dot, that's a mapik. Okay, a few more here. Okay, this is a dot and a nun. That's not a beged kefit. You got it. Dagesh chazak. Okay. Taf. Look in the rear view mirror. What do you see? Yep, a shva. So, it's a kal. Hey with a dot. That one's easy, right? It's the mapik. All right, see that vav with a dot? Follows a consonant. It's a shuruk. All right, almost done. Last one. It's a beged kefit. It follows a shva. Dagesh kal. Awesome, you did it. Nice work. All right, that brings us to the end. Thanks for watching the video. Like, follow, bell, all that jazz, but most importantly, love your Hebrew.